Good morning. Well, the last time we talked, I was sharing with you about the Passover, and we talked a little bit about crucifixion. So let me talk about that a little bit today and give you an opportunity to kind of understand crucifixion. We can get the idea that just about uh, wood cross members and somebody nailed to that wood and then they die. But this is one of the most cruel forms of capital punishment that was ever devised. It wasn't actually devised by the Romans. It was actually devised by the Persians. And you'll find maybe a grave reference to it, that although the King James Version does a poor translation of what's talked about. But in the story of Esther, Haman actually erects something similar to this in his backyard. It's not a gallows. Um, Hanging as a capital punishment was something that didn't come until much, much later in history, and it wasn't deemed as being cruel like crucifixion was. The idea behind this capital punishment was to cause as much pain and agony as long as they could to the person that was being punished. So some things to be thinking about here, and they found this in an archaeological dig that somebody that was crucified, but they couldn't get him off the cross. And usually you could pull the nails out. Well, evidently one of the nails had gotten stuck in a knot or something in this piece of wood, and they were unable to do that, so they just buried the man with his cross. And so finding it gives us a kind of an indication of some of these things. First of all, some of the picture renditions we get of Jesus on the cross are completely out of line and out of order, because he wasn't clear up in the sky out above everybody. The person being crucified maybe was at most maybe 18 inches. His feet were 18 inches off the ground. So you could get right up in his face, and if you wanted to spit on him, or if you wanted to smack him or slap him, I mean, you could do it because he's right there and within hand's reach. He wasn't clear up there in the sky away from you. I don't know where that came from, but it's part of the artistic renditions, and so artistic renditions have become kind of dogma. We know that if you were nailed in the palms of your hands, if you put a nail right here, that it would pull out because it would come between the tendons, and there's nothing there to stop the nail. But in Eastern culture, like I was telling in the very, very first video, that in Eastern thinking, your hand started in your wrist, and so from here, and even in some cultures, it went from your elbow. So from your elbow all the way up to the end of your fingers was your hand. Well, there's a place right here in your wrist. It's right about there, and if you feel on both sides, you can feel the hole, and that's where they drove the nails. And that place is bounded by bones, and you can hang all day up there. You'll rot up there before the nails will ever come out. In fact, that's a lot of times what happened when people were crucified, is the Romans didn't care about laws, they didn't care about concerns or anything like that from anybody. The idea was to kill somebody and to let them up there, and it was supposed to be a deterrent from anybody else engaging in the same crimes. So Jesus was nailed probably right through here, and nails would have held on. He wouldn't probably tied with ropes. Sometimes they did some of that, but nailed in there. But the arms were stretched out as far as they could stretch them, almost to the place where it would be pulling the joints, the joints out of socket. And then the feet were extended out, and then to figure out where they were going to be, they put a little block in there or kind of raise the knees up, because the idea is to give the person an opportunity to raise up, because what happens when your arms are extended like that, then the muscles in your sides will paralyze and you won't be able to breathe. People who died on the cross didn't die from bleeding to death. They died from asphyxiation, because you couldn't get a breath anymore. The pain, or the muscles or your body just could no longer lift yourself up to get a breath. And so the nail in the feet would have gone through the high arch there. There's another place similar to the place like in your palm here, where it's surrounded by bone, and it would go right in there. Later crucifixions, they actually took the heels and put them to the sides of the cross. They put a little spacer thing in there, and they drove it right through the heels, and you would raise up on your heels. But the idea was to cause as much pain in the process of someone dying, but not to allow them to die too soon. And so they have perfected this thing down to a science, to where they could make somebody last 2 or 3, maybe 4 days on the cross before they finally gave up and they could no longer raise themselves up. So here's the thing in the Gospels. We read that the Jews came to Pilate requesting that the prisoner's legs be broken, so that they could celebrate Passover without violating or defiling the celebration. And when they came and they found Jesus was already dead, and that brings up some important things to talk about. Maybe I'll talk about it in a next session or something, that talking about how we know Jesus was dead. But the two thieves, they broke their legs so that they would die quickly. And the idea was to let them suffocate, asphyxiate on the cross. They couldn't raise themselves up; their legs were broken, and the struggling and the agony just was pronounced, but it was shortened so that the Jewish Passover could be celebrated without defilement. But that gives you an idea of the crucifixion. It was a very, very cruel and vile thing. The scourging that Jesus took was given to a lot of prisoners because the idea was to get them in the state, especially if there was something, in kind of celebration time, that they needed to make sure that the prisoners died quickly, or that their agony was superimposed, or superimposed is the wrong word, but increased to a higher level. We would do this scourging, which tore them up just horribly, and then as they hung on the cross, that they would be weakened quicker, and that death could be hastened in that process. But all being said here, that's the idea of crucifixion. If you read some of the accounts there, and then there's several writings that are by pathologists and doctors who have examined what's been written in the Scripture and then apply it to a human life. They've been able to determine that what was going on and what was happening in Jesus' body, and then also by when the spear was stabbed into Jesus' side, went into the pericardia there, and the water and the blood coming out. It let everybody know that Jesus, his heart had stopped. It had been completely stopped, and the collection of the body fluids was evident that he was dead. Anyway, that's enough for right now. Hope to see you in one of my future videos here. I hope you're enjoying them. Leave your comments for me, and we'll talk about them later. Okay, thank you very much.